Faithfully speaking, I speaking love, speaking hope, speaking peace, faithfully speaking. Come on, stick it into your day. Come on, put a smile on your face. Come on, hold your head up high. It's already okay.
Oh yeah, I'm loving that intro music there. Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of Faithfully Speaking, where we take topics of conversation and interest and concerns, and we talk about them in a good, positive, honest, and loving way. And so we are here to speak faith and life into every situation with this podcast. So today, y'all, we want to talk about something that really affects millions of people every day, everywhere, in every way. And that is our weight and our health, specifically obesity. You know, we were all saddened to hear the news of Grammy Award winner, American Idol contestant Mandisa passing away in her home there in Nashville. The Nashville medical examiners listed her cause of death as complications from class 3 obesity. I believe that was what it was. And, she was only 47 years old. So, of course, we know, if you've been watching this, one of my very closest friends is a doctor, and she is a stress and obesity doctor. So after all of this happened, we have Oprah Winfrey, who's talking about, her role in I guess maybe, talking about body and how we should lose weight and apologizing and all sorts of things. I'm like, we need to talk about this. And she says, Melissa, I'm ready whenever you are. So please help me welcome once again to Faithfully Speaking, my sister, my girl, Dr. Tiffany Lowe Clayton, stress and expert obesity doctor. How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
As always, you're there in a clutch for me. You're like, Melissa, and I always tell everybody when I talk about you, I'm like, Tiffany just knows so much information. She's just always on it, and you're always studying to show yourself approved. So whenever I have, information or topics that's having anything to do with medical wise, I'm always thinking of you, because not only do you give it to us knowledge wise, but you're also a woman of God, a first lady, and all of that. So you give it to us in that spiritual setting as well. And so we really appreciate it. So
no, thank you so much. And I always love to educate. I love to teach people because, Bible says we die for a lack of knowledge, right? And especially in our community, when so many people have misconceptions or mistrust in the health community. So thank you for having the platform where, I and others can come on and just educate people to help them be smarter and make wiser decisions.
And that's what it's all about. So we want to tackle this topic about weight, weight, our health. And like I said, coming and stemming from the story and Mandisa passing just a couple of months ago, at the age of 47, we as women are always, trying to do a whole lot. We're super women, and sometimes we forget about us and making sure that we are healthy. And so that's what I definitely wanted to be able to cover with this. So as we get started, let's, of course, I introduced you and said you're a stress and obesity doctor. Just give everybody a little bit of the background of what you actually do on a daily basis.
Ooh, child. Ooh.
Everything.
So yes, I am a family physician by training. I have been a family physician now for going on 24 years. Oh my goodness. And I saw in my practice how weight and stress both impacted my patients that I saw. So, I got special certification in both of them and became a board certified obesity medicine specialist. And so now my practice has shifted to be strictly obesity medicine, but I'm also assistant professor at, Campbell School of Osteopathic Medicine. So I teach my medical students how to not just take care of, patients from a medical standpoint, but being culturally competent as they're doing it. And then also, with obesity. And I also have, the opportunity to just go around the nation and just speak to people and educate them, doctors and, the community alike, on just ways to live better.
Right, right. All right. Well, let's just jump into this. When we think obesity, it's not something we define ourselves as. We're like, okay, I might be overweight, but I'm not obese. So I want to know, first of all, what defines obesity?
I think that's a great question. And even when you were speaking about Mandisa and how she was classified as having class 3 obesity, what does that mean?
Exactly.
So when we look at obesity and classifications of obesity, one of the easiest ways to do that is to use the body mass index. And when we look at the body mass index, otherwise known as the BMI, it really measures your height to your weight. What your weight is in comparison to your height. And when we look at that number, it's a very loose number. But we say that if you're between the body mass index of 25, 18 to 25, that's a person who's technically considered to have normal weight. And then if your body mass index is 25 to 29, then you're overweight. And then if your body mass index is greater than 30, then you're classified as having obesity. And then there's different categories of obesity: class 1, class 2, and class 3. Class 3 being a person whose body mass index is greater than 40, and they're classified as having severe obesity. Obviously, the higher your body mass index, the higher the likelihood that you could have complications from the obesity. And in Mandisa's case, that's what happened to her. Now, that's how we classify it based on body mass index. But I'm not a fan of body mass index by itself. I don't think it's very appropriate for everyone, and it's definitely not appropriate for Black and brown people to look at body mass index alone and classifying it with health risk. But we can talk about that a little bit more, because you want to look at more than just BMI, but it is a good indicator.
That's good. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure we talk about that. So how does obesity, like you said, Mandisa, it was complications from obesity. It didn't say, the coroner didn't say from obesity, it said complications. What are some of the complications that come along with being obese?
Oh my goodness. So when we talk about obesity, there are, and this is not something that people understand, over 200 disease states have obesity as a major underlying factor. As a matter of fact, the last that we looked at in numbers, it's about 236. COVID being one of them. COVID, you can't get COVID simply because you have obesity, but the complications that come from a person who has obesity and has COVID actually increases that person's risk of dying. And there was some loose reporting. I think her father might have said something about her having COVID. I don't know if that was confirmed, but there may have been a question that she was had been impacted by COVID recently or in the time prior to her death. And that is something that we see with complications. So when we're saying complications of obesity, if a person has obesity anywhere between that class 1 to class 3 range, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, like I said, complications from COVID, sleep apnea. There's so many diseases that are impacted, and not just the physical diseases, right? But also we see an increase in things like depression, anxiety. All of these things psychologically can impact a person as well when they're struggling with an unhealthy weight.
Right. And mental health is definitely top of our list as far as, things that affect that, and obesity and weight being one of those things as well. To mention obesity impacting the different things, how does it impact our community? And how does our community, meaning, the African American community, how do we see obesity?
Well, I'll say this. When we look at obesity and who's actually impacted the most, we know that Black and brown individuals are impacted at greater and disproportionate rates. And when you think about health disparities in general in general, Black and brown people are impacted at disproportionate rates, largely because we are also the ones who are impacted by social determinants of health, where we live, eat, sleep, worship, and play, that are not always optimal. So there may not be safe areas that we can go out and take a walk. And so as a provider, if I'm saying go eat well, go get some healthy foods. Well, if the closest place for me to get something healthy is 15 miles away and I have transportation issues, is that something that I can reasonably do? Or if I can't go outside because there's not sidewalks out there, or there may not be safe places where I can actually go take a walk, is that something that I can reasonably do? And that's not necessarily our fault. It's, you know, it's kind of, it has been designed historically to be that way. But then it also can increase a person's risk for, you know, for having obesity. And you know, in our community in particular, you know, when we look at a person and their weight, we are very forgiving as a community when it comes to having a person who might have a higher body mass index or have a unhealthy weight, because, you know, we might say, oh, we're curvy, or,
Right.
you know,
Used to it. Yeah.
right, we're used to it, or, you know,
Mhm.
my family had it, mom had it, dad had it. So that's just who we are. We're big bones,
I
or
was gonna ask, that was gonna be my question. Is there such thing as being big boned?
well, there is actually, there is. When we talk about you just come from a big bone family, that's
Right.
true. We
Okay.
know that if you have one parent who has an issue with obesity, it increases your risk for having obesity by 50%. If you have two parents that are have an issue with their weight, it
Mhm.
increases the risk that their offspring are going to have an increased issue with their weight by 75%. So genetics really does play a very big role in whether a person will struggle with their weight. But there's also lifestyle that we have to look at as
Mhm.
well. So understanding that you have increased risk doesn't mean that that's going to be your fate. You just have to understand it's an increased risk, and what are you going to do about it?
You may have to work a little bit harder
Right.
to get.
We have to
So
work a
you
little.
mentioned that lifestyle. What kind of things can we do to combat it? I know it's not easy. Lord knows I went through strength training the other day and I'm hurting right now. So we know it's not easy, but what are some of the things that if we commit ourselves to that can definitely help us out in our challenge of being overweight and obese?
Well, I'm going to say this. First things first. Nothing is easy until it's easy, right? And one of the things that I'll say is when a person goes from not having a very active lifestyle to then all of a sudden trying to develop physical activity in their lifestyle, it's going to be difficult. And so I think that if we go in immediately with the mindset that it's not going to be easy until it gets easier, and you already accept that, that kind of helps it. The other thing that I'll say is there's some things that we just don't feel like doing. So sometimes I may not feel like getting up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and exercising. Don't struggle with the fact that you don't feel like doing it. You're not going to feel like doing it. Accept it, but then do it anyway. Do it anyway, because it's the first step. It's the getting off the couch or getting up and just becoming physically active that's going to make the difference. When it comes to physical activity by itself is not the greatest for weight loss, but it's essential to maintain weight that you have lost. So if I've lost 20, 30, 40 pounds, I
Great.
have to be a person who's physically active to make sure that I can keep that weight off. It's
That's
also really good for other stuff too, like our heart and just our mental health. Everything. There's so many other good reasons why you should be physically active as well.
right, right. And that is a very good point. Because I know I have learned because I kind of grew up saying, hey, if I'm physically active, it's going to help me lose weight and this, that, and the other. But basically, more so, it's what you eat, it's what you put in you that's going to help you lose that weight. And as you just said, it's not easy until it gets easy because, and I have to say, from my experience, I never liked avocados, but I kept reading how good they were for you. So I ate them, as you said, anyway. And now they're actually good to me.
Yes. Yes. Not that I would tell anybody to torture themselves, right? Like I'm like, if you really just don't like it, okay, fine. Let's figure out what else we can do. But But you're right. You have to be willing to have an open mind, and you have to be willing to try new foods or new things. And I really say to my patients all the time, food is fuel, not fun. Food is fuel, not fun. And in our community, one of the things that we do is we center everything around food, right? If it's a funeral, we're eating. If it's a wedding, we're eating. If it's a party, we're eating. Somebody graduate, we eating. We center everything around food, and it's not always the healthiest type of food. I tell people, Melissa, listen, you can't always have you can't have Sunday dinner Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
You're right. Even though
Right?
I want to fried chicken every day.
Right. So if you are literally cooking a Sunday meal with the real heavy, fatty, greasy foods like the fried chicken, the macaroni and cheese, the candy yams, the collard greens, and all that, and we're thinking that we're doing that because we're being good to our family. So we're cooking a home cooked meal, and we see that as a home cooked meal. It is, and there's love in it. However, it may not equate to a healthy lifestyle. So it's just really important to take the things that we feel like are important to us and figure out, how do I make it healthier, or how do I make it go into my goal of maintaining a healthy weight? Because everything that's healthy isn't always helpful when you're trying to lose weight. So you want to make sure that you're doing it with someone. Talk to a dietitian, talk to someone like myself who can help you develop a plan and a structured way of eating, because eating is really about 70 to 90% of a person's ability to actually not just lose weight, but be able to maintain a healthy weight overall.
70%.
A lot. Mhm. You
like
really
you
truly are what you eat.
Yeah. Fuel, not fun.
Yes.
And that's what we usually, associate food with, is fun. You get upset, you depressed, eat ice cream, and maybe we need to find something else, to fuel those things too. So that's
Yeah.
great advice. So we're talking food, and you're talking, making the right choices. I know now a lot of the choices have been extended as far as losing weight when it comes to weight loss drugs.
Mhm.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
A lot of people are going that direction. Their I guess, excuse or the way they're saying it is that, hey, if it helps my diabetes, I need this weight loss drug.
Mhm.
Is that a good reason for it? Is it good for everyone? What are the pros and the cons to these weight loss drugs? And I know you mentioned before these even compound drugs, and I want you to definitely give us more information about those.
Yeah. So I will say this. 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have many choices when it came to what I call anti-obesity medicine, but what the lay community calls weight loss medication or weight loss drugs. We didn't have a lot of choices, but over the last several years, we have now seen many opportunities or many options that we can now offer our patients, in addition to helping them maintain a healthier lifestyle, which includes physical activity and a healthier eating habit, and then managing your stress level too, and healthy things like that. But now with anti-obesity medicine on the market, there's just so many other ways that we can now help our patients, and they work. These medications work. They're not for everybody, and every medication isn't for everyone. So it's important to make sure that you are having that conversation with your healthcare provider to ensure that whatever you're picking is going to be what's best for you. But studies have shown that when it comes to anti-obesity medicine, it can help patients lose anywhere between 6 to almost 20% from their baseline body weight. So for some people with some of the injectable medications, what we call the GLP-1 receptor agonists, some of those medications can help you lose upwards of 20%. So that could be anywhere between 60 to 70 pounds if you combine it with a healthy lifestyle. So they are there and they work. They're powerful, powerful medications. And so they're not for everybody. But again, that's a conversation that you want to have with your provider to make sure that it's safe for you.
Absolutely. So compound drugs.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, I know you have your reservations about that, and I want you to share those reservations with our listeners, because if they're ever if someone suggested, we want to let them know, we want them to know the knowledge behind it or what questions to ask when
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I am not a fan of compounded medications, not at this point. I will say this. When we're talking about compounded medications, it's mostly about the injectable medicine. So everybody knows these medications that's been on the market, Wegovy and Zepbound and, the shot. And I have patients coming to me saying, I want the shot, I want the shot. Well, the shot works. And like I said, you can lose upwards of 20% with some of the medications that we have. But they're expensive. They're not cheap medications. So if your insurance company covers it, then that's great. But if for whatever reason your insurance company does not cover it, or you can't find it because they are so popular now that in many places, some places are developing shortage, not because of the shortage of supply, but just because the demand is so big, that some people are starting to go to these compound medications. The reason why I'm not a fan of them and I really don't endorse them is because we don't know what's in these medications. The thought process is that they come from some generic form of the active ingredients of the ones that we know well. But they're not FDA approved, and there's really no way for us to control, what's in these medicines. So when there's some proprietary blend of this generic with these other medications, we don't know what that proprietary blend is. So I can't really speak to what the side effects could be for someone, and especially long-term side effects. So it may work for you and it may do well, but given that the pharmaceutical companies don't have these medications in generic, you got to ask yourself the question: where is this medication coming from?
Mhm.
What's in the proprietary blend? And can I really trust the company that I'm getting this medication from? Because just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's a better option.
Absolutely. And we don't want anybody to, um, take their health. You need to pick your health over weight loss. In other
Right.
words,
Absolutely.
this whole quick thing and it's happening. So as we kind of wrap up, I don't know, first of all, are there any other things that you would like to share with us? I know this is something that you cover. Like you said, this is your expertise. You have patients that come to you every day. What are some of the most asked questions? What are some of the most things that you cover the most, the things that you answer for them that we may need to know?
Well, I'll say this. One of the things that I think for anybody out there who's struggling with weight, for anybody, and I really want this to be said because there's a lot of bias in the community. And there's also just a lot of people who think, well, all you got to do is eat less and move more. That's it. The answer is just that simple. First things first, I want everybody to realize that when we talk about obesity, obesity is a very complicated disease and it's a very complex disease. There's many reasons why a person may struggle with their weight. And so for anybody who's thinking that, if I'm struggling with my weight, there's some type of moral failure. It's not a moral failure. Obesity is a matter of physiology, not someone's fault. It's not someone's fault. And so I want to encourage anybody who's been struggling with their weight with regards to that. The other thing that I will say is this: if you find that you have been trying to lose weight and it's been unsuccessful, or that you're in this yo-yo of weight loss and weight regain, then go to somebody who's trained to be able to help you. Go to a reputable person so that you're getting good information. Not stuff from social media or from your friend or somebody who's like, I did it, this is how you should do it, and this soup
Right.
diet or this diet or that juice diet. No, go to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
To mention diets, that's one thing we haven't covered. What about the diets? What about the fastings that's there? Are they good? Should we, how do we figure out which one is best for us? And I know a lot of them, certain ones kind of help out with, diabetes or high blood pressure and things like that.
So I think it's individual for everybody, right? I don't think you can really have an answer on which is the best diet. First of all, I don't even like the word diet because I always say diets die. That the root word, diets die. We don't want diets. We want lifestyles. We
Gotcha.
want to make sure that when we're talking about somebody, eating, it's a healthy eating plan, something that's going to be sustainable long term. And that's balanced. You don't really want to cut out one complete food group. That's just too drastic and it's not sustainable. So what I say is it's going to be individual. There are different diets out there. We hear low carb, we hear keto, we hear intermittent fasting, and they all work. But just like there's not every one medicine is not for everybody, every diet's not for everybody either. So I think it's a good conversation, to have. And then the last thing that I'll say is when you think about your weight, if you struggle with your weight, and this is something that you've been struggling with, especially for a long term, recognize that it's not about getting over your weight issue, right? You're not going to get over your weight issue. You're still going to have issues with it. You're going to get control of it. And the goal is to maintain control of it. So think about your journey with obesity as a lifestyle, not a destination. Not something that when I lose this weight, then I'm gonna be done and I can go back to eating all the bad food that I was eating before, because then you're going to get the results that you were getting before. So I would just encourage us to love ourselves for who we are. I am a firm believer in things like the body positivity movement, but recognize that while we're loving ourselves, just try to get to a healthier version of it. And that includes getting to a healthier weight, because unfortunately, for somebody like Mandisa, it's too late. But I would use her story and use her as motivation to say, I need to do something about this, because we know that something as simple as 5 to 10% weight loss from your baseline body weight can make a significant metabolic difference. And all those problems that I talked about people deal with, if you just lose 5 to 10%, you can actually heal from the inside out. So that's what I would tell everybody, that just because you struggle doesn't mean that it's hopeless. There's actually more hope than we've ever had before. You just got to work with a person to get there.
Absolutely. Found out information, have more shows like this, talk about it more, to your friends and everybody else. Like you said, it's all about healing, because when you're there and you're overweight in the obesity state, like you said, it matters with your mental ability as well. And once you do that, you find yourself closing everybody else off, and it's just getting worse. So open up. We're going to have conversations like this, and to mention that and ask questions. And if they want to ask you more questions because of things maybe we didn't have time enough to talk about during this podcast of Faithfully Speaking, how can they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Well, you can connect with me on any of my social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. It's Dr. Lowe Clayton or Dr. TLC, Dr. Lowe Clayton. And if you want to come see me, if you're in the Raleigh area and you need help, come see me in the clinic. I would love to talk with you more and see how I can help you. 919-350-WELL, 919-350-WELL. I'd love to see you.
Find your friends, find your family that will go along with you. Like I've already invited Tiffany. She's had her bike out the other day, and I said, hey, get it, bring it. Let's find a trail. Let's go. Let's make it happen. And so that's what it is. Find those who support you. Get out.
Get your support group.
It's the whole lifestyle thing, as you mentioned. So Dr. TLC, I love that. Tiffany, thank you so very much, my sister, for always coming on and being there for us and giving us some great information. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, y'all. There's the number right there at the bottom. Write it down and contact her if you need so. But you know what? Share this podcast with your friends, with your family, those who may be going through. Great information we've covered today, and just keep moving. You know what? God is a healer over all things. And how can we be God's temple and be used by him when we're all broken down and we know what's best for us? So let's use this knowledge and let's better ourselves, and let's move on to a bigger and a healthier us each and every day. Again, Tiffany, thank you so very much. For everyone else, until next time, we'll see you here, speaking life into every situation with Faithfully Speaking. I'm your sister, Melissa Wade in the Water. We love you. Grace and peace.